The wind was cold that night, and the man walked slowly along the dirt path with his little son beside him. Their clothes were old, their shoes torn, and the boy's small hand gripped his father's fingers tightly. The man had only one horse left, a tired brown animal that carried their last supplies. Life had been hard after his wife's death, but he kept going for the sake of his child. He did not expect to meet anyone on such a lonely road, but fate had other plans. Near the edge of the forest, something moved in the shadows. At first, he thought it was just a wild animal, but then he heard a weak sound like a whisper. His son pressed closer to him, frightened. The man stopped and looked more carefully. Under the dim moonlight, he saw a figure lying in the dirt. He stepped closer, heart beating faster, and then he saw her clearly. It was a girl, but not a human girl. Her skin was pale with a faint glow, her hair tangled with dust and leaves. Her body was covered in cuts, and strange blood, silver and faintly shining, ran down her arm. Her chest rose and fell slowly, as if each breath was a battle. She opened her eyes for a moment, and he saw they were bright, inhuman, with a strange light inside. She whispered only one word, almost too soft to hear. "Sisters?" Then her head dropped back into the dirt. The boy gasped and clung to his father's coat. "She's not like us," the boy said, shaking. "She looks dangerous." The man looked down at her again. Maybe his son was right. Maybe she was dangerous. She was alien. She was different. But she was also dying. His heart pulled in two directions, fear on one side, compassion on the other. He thought of his wife, the way she had always cared for the weak, the lost, the broken. Could he just leave this girl here to die? He looked at his horse, the last horse he had. It was all he owned. Without it, traveling would be slow and hard. But the girl could not walk. If he left her here, she would not survive the night. Slowly, with a heavy breath, he made his choice. "Help me," he said to his son. Together, they lifted the girl. She was light, too light for someone her age, as if she had not eaten in days. Her blood left glowing stains on his hands, but he did not let go. He placed her gently on the horse's back. The animal snorted nervously, as if it also sensed she was not human, but it obeyed. The boy looked up at his father with wide, confused eyes. "But father, this is our last horse. How will we travel?" The man put his hand on the boy's shoulder and said quietly, "We walk." His voice was steady, though his heart was uncertain. They began moving slowly through the night. The father walked beside the horse, holding the reins. His son walked at his side, small legs stumbling now and then, but he did not complain. Behind them, the forest was dark and silent, as if holding its breath. From time to time, the man looked back, half expecting something to appear from the trees. The girl made small sounds in her sleep, whispers in a language he did not know. Once, she said the word sisters again, and her hand moved as if reaching for someone. The man wondered what it meant. Were her sisters looking for her? Were they alive, or were they the ones who had left her to die? Questions circled in his mind, and none of them had answers. All he knew was that at this moment, she was his responsibility. He had chosen to save her, and that choice could not be undone. Hours passed. The road stretched long, and the stars watched from above. His feet hurt, and his son grew tired, but still they walked. The girl's breathing was weak but steady. Every time she coughed, the man's heart jumped, afraid it would be her last breath. Yet she clung to life, stubborn like a flame, refusing to die. As they neared their home, the boy finally spoke again. "Why did you save her? She's not one of us. What if her people come for her? What if they hurt us?" The man thought carefully before answering. He looked at his son, at his tired eyes and thin face. "Because no one else did," he said softly. "If we turn away from the weak, then what kind of people are we? Your mother, she would not have left her here." The boy was silent after that, though his small hand found his father's again, as if seeking safety. When they finally reached their small wooden house at the edge of the village, the night was nearly over. The horizon was beginning to pale with the first sign of dawn. The man carried the girl inside, laying her gently on the bed where his son usually slept. The boy did not argue, though he looked uneasy watching the alien rest in their home. The man lit a small lamp and studied her face. She looked peaceful in sleep, but her body was broken. He cleaned her wounds as best as he could, though the strange glowing blood frightened him. She stirred once, her lips moving as if to speak, but no sound came. He wondered again about the words she had whispered, sisters. He did not know then that this word would change everything. He did not know that at sunrise, silence would fall upon his house and that three figures would be waiting outside, watching. For now, all he knew was that he had given up his last horse for a stranger who was not even human. He sat down near the bed, his son leaning against him, both of them too tired to sleep. The night air was heavy with questions. And though the girl rested quietly, the man could not shake the feeling that this was not the end of something, but the beginning. The house was small, built from rough wood, with only one room and a roof that sometimes leaked when it rained. The man carried the alien girl inside, careful not to wake her, and placed her on the old wooden bed in the corner. His son stood near the door, watching with wide eyes. The boy had never seen anyone like her before. Her skin glowed faintly even in the dim light, and the silver lines of blood still shone on her arms. She looked both beautiful and strange, like a dream mixed with fear. The man found an old cloth and dipped it in water. He cleaned her wounds, though every time he touched her, his son flinched. "She is not human," the boy whispered. "What if she hurts us when she wakes up?" The father sighed. "She is weak. She is hurt. Right now, she needs help, not fear." But inside, the man also felt uneasy. He did not know who she was or where she came from. He only knew that she had been close to death, and he had chosen to save her. He could not turn back from that choice now. The girl moved in her sleep, her lips parting slightly. She whispered words he could not understand, her voice soft as wind. Her hand twitched as if reaching for someone who was not there. The boy shivered and pulled a blanket around himself. Hours passed, and the night grew deeper. The man sat near the bed, watching her chest rise and fall. At last her eyes opened. They glowed faintly in the darkness, and for a moment, she stared at him as though she did not know where she was. Then she tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. "Rest," the man said gently. "You are safe here." Her voice came out broken and soft. "I should not be here. I must leave before sunrise." Her words surprised him. "You can't even walk. You will die if you go out there now." Her gaze shifted toward the small window where the faint moonlight shone in. She shook her head weakly. "You don't understand. At sunrise, they will come." The man frowned. "Who will come?" But she only closed her eyes again, as if too tired to answer. The boy clung to his father's arm and whispered, "See, she's dangerous. Something bad will happen." The father did not reply. He listened to the quiet night. Outside, the forest was strangely silent. No owls called, no wind rustled the branches. It was as though the world itself was holding its breath. He stood and walked to the window. The sky was still dark, but he felt a weight pressing against his chest, a warning he could not name. He thought of her words, "before sunrise," and wondered if he had brought danger into his home. When he turned back, the girl was awake again, her eyes on his son. The boy froze, but she only gave him a faint smile. Slowly, with effort, she raised her hand. Her fingers trembled as she reached toward him. The boy wanted to run, but something in her weak smile stopped him. Against his fear, he stepped closer. She touched his small hand with hers, her skin warm and strange. "It's safe," she whispered softly. "I will not harm you." The boy looked at his father in confusion. The man nodded for him to stay calm. She let her hand drop, exhausted. Then, in a voice almost like a song, she began to hum. It was not a human melody. It rose and fell in ways that felt older than the earth, soft but full of sorrow. The boy's fear melted away, replaced with a quiet calm. His eyelids grew heavy, and before long, he fell asleep on the floor beside the bed. The man watched silently. He realized she was not only wounded in her body, but also broken inside. The scars on her arms, the fear in her voice, the sadness in her song. She had been through more than he could imagine. When her song faded, she opened her eyes again and looked at him. "You should not have saved me," she said in a weak tone. "Now you are in danger, too." He leaned closer. "Danger from who? Your sisters? Hunters? Tell me." Her lips trembled, but she did not answer. Instead, she turned her face away, silent. Frustration burned in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. "I gave you my last horse. I carried you here. At least tell me why they would come for you." But still, she said nothing. Only her breathing filled the room, slow and heavy. The man sat back in the chair, running a hand across his tired face. His heart ached with questions. Why had he found her on the road? Why had she whispered about sisters? Why did she say sunrise? His eyes drifted to the boy sleeping on the floor, his small hand curled near the alien girl's. For the first time in many months, the boy slept peacefully. Strange, he thought. She was a stranger, yet her presence calmed his child. He stayed awake through the night, listening. Every creak of the wooden house made his muscles tighten. Every whisper of wind outside made him glance toward the door. The silence of the forest was wrong, too deep, too watchful. Once, near midnight, he thought he heard movement outside. Hooves, faint and distant, as if many riders moved through the trees. He froze, heart hammering. But when he listened harder, the sound was gone. Perhaps it was only his imagination. Perhaps not. He looked at the girl again. She was asleep now, her face soft, her body still fragile. She looked less like a danger, and more like a child abandoned by her own people. He could not understand why anyone would hunt her. The hours crept by slowly. The fire in the small stove burned low, casting flickering shadows across the walls. His eyelids grew heavy, but he forced himself to stay awake. He could not let his guard down. Finally, as the black sky began to pale, the man felt the weight of her words pressing in his chest. "Before sunrise," she had said. And now sunrise was near. He stood by the window again, staring at the horizon. The first light touched the sky, painting it gray. The silence outside deepened until it was unbearable. Even the old horse tied near the shed shifted nervously, ears flicking as though it sensed something unseen. The man's hand tightened around the wooden handle of the chair. His heart beat fast. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know what. The morning passed slowly, and the alien girl's breathing grew stronger with each hour. She opened her eyes again, and this time, she was able to sit up with some effort. The boy kept his distance at first, hiding behind his father, but he could not stop looking at her. She did not seem dangerous now, only weak and tired, like a bird with broken wings. The father gave her a bowl of warm broth made from what little food they had. She sipped carefully, her hands shaking, but after drinking, color returned faintly to her pale skin. When she finished, the boy surprised himself by speaking first. "Are you still hurt?" She looked at him with those strange glowing eyes. Instead of answering, she smiled softly, and for a moment the boy forgot his fear. She did not speak much, only small words, but her presence seemed gentler than the night before. Later, while the father worked outside to chop wood, the boy stayed inside with her. At first, he sat in silence, but then she noticed him trying to stack small pieces of firewood. With slow movements, she reached out to help him. She could not move much, but she showed him how to balance the wood so it would not fall. Her hands trembled, but her patience made the boy smile. Then she began humming again, the same strange tune from the night before. It was soft, like the sound of water flowing over stones. The boy tilted his head, listening. When she noticed his curiosity, she sang a few words in her language. The words were impossible for him to understand, yet they carried warmth. The boy sat closer, his fear forgotten. She looked at him and said, in broken human speech, "Song, safe, calm." The boy repeated the strange sound she had sung, clumsy and wrong. She laughed softly, a fragile sound, like bells far away. Then she tried to teach him the right way. The boy laughed too when his voice cracked, and soon the room that had felt heavy with silence was filled with something lighter. When the father returned, he stopped at the doorway and listened. His son and the alien girl were laughing together, their voices blending with the soft melody she sang. For the first time in months, since his wife's death, the house did not feel empty. That night, the father cleaned her wounds again. He noticed more scars now, not just from the recent injury. Some were old, thin lines across her arms and back. Others were deep, as if burned or cut long ago. His chest tightened as he realized she had been suffering long before he found her. "Who did this to you?" he asked quietly. She turned her face away. For a while she said nothing, but then she whispered, "Not accident. They hunt me." The father froze. "Who hunts you?" Her lips trembled. "My own." The boy, who was half asleep beside her, stirred and opened his eyes. "Why?" he asked with the innocence only a child could have. She looked at him for a long moment, then touched his hair gently. "Because weak." Her voice broke. The father's heart ached. She was an outcast, abandoned by her own blood. He remembered how she had whispered sisters on the road. Was it a cry for help or a memory of those who had betrayed her? Later, when the boy grew restless and could not sleep, she began humming again. This time, she sang fully, her voice low but clear, carrying notes that seemed to fill every corner of the house. The boy's eyes slowly closed as the melody wrapped around him like a blanket. The father watched, torn between awe and worry. Her voice was beautiful, but it carried a sadness so heavy that it pierced even his tired heart. She was not just soothing his son, she was singing her own pain. When the boy was asleep, she looked at the father. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. You? Risk much? Why? He sat down across from her. Because I could not leave you to die. I have lost too much already. I will not watch another life fade in front of me. Her eyes softened. But danger comes. You no understand. He leaned closer. Then explain it to me. Who is coming? But she lowered her gaze and did not answer. He sighed and leaned back, staring at the flickering lamp. A storm was building, though he did not yet know its size. He could only feel it. The girl, however, shifted her hand until it rested lightly on his sleeping son's shoulder. He is kind, she whispered. Like you. For the first time, her voice carried something more than sorrow. It carried gratitude. The father sat in silence, his mind heavy with questions. She was no ordinary wanderer. She was carrying secrets, maybe even curses, that could destroy everything he had left. And yet, as he looked at her, fragile, scarred, but still singing to comfort his son, he knew he could not turn her away. He remembered her warning, before sunrise. The words had haunted him through the night. He wanted answers, but he sensed she was too afraid to give them. Still, the bond forming between her and his boy was undeniable. His son, who had been so lonely after his mother's death, now clung to her presence. The night deepened. The fire crackled softly. The boy dreamed peacefully for the first time in weeks, thanks to her song. The father could not sleep. He sat awake, his hand resting on the old rifle leaning against the wall. If danger came, he would be ready. Outside, the forest was silent again, too silent. The man thought of hooves, faint and distant, that he might have imagined the night before. Perhaps they had not been in his head after all. Inside the house, the alien girl finally drifted into deep sleep. But even in her dreams, her lips moved, whispering that single word again, sisters. The father stared at her, unease growing in his chest. Sisters. She had said it again. Was it a warning, a memory, or a prayer? He did not know then, but the answer was already moving toward him in the silence of the night, carried on hooves that would soon reach his door. The father woke before dawn, his body heavy with sleeplessness. He sat on the chair near the window, staring at the pale horizon. The girl's warning from last night echoed in his mind. Before sunrise, they will come. His heart thudded with unease, but he tried to tell himself it was only fear playing tricks on him. The boy was still sleeping on the floor, curled beside the alien girl, their hands close together as if they had known each other for years. The sight softened the father's heart, but at the same time, it made him more worried. The horse outside whinnied suddenly, a sharp sound that cut through the silence. The man stood quickly and gripped the old rifle, leaning against the wall. His hands felt sweaty as he moved toward the window. The first light of dawn stretched across the land, silver and soft. At first, he saw nothing. But then, at the edge of the mist, dark shapes appeared. 3 tall figures stood near the wooden fence. They were not moving, only standing in silence, watching the house. Their shapes were slender but strong, their posture proud. The faint glow of their armor caught the morning light, and strange weapons rested at their sides. They were not human. They were her kind. The father's breath caught in his throat. So it was true. She had not lied. They had come. The girl stirred on the bed, her glowing eyes snapping open as if she felt them even before seeing them. Her body trembled, and her lips parted in fear. "My sisters," she whispered. The boy woke at the sound of her voice and rubbed his eyes. "What is it?" he asked softly. But when he followed her gaze to the window and saw the tall figures outside, he gasped and clung to his father's leg. The father did not move at first. His body felt heavy, trapped between choices. Should he open the door and face them? Should he hide the girl? Or should he take his son and run? But where could he go? They were already here. The sisters remained still, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim morning light. Their faces were calm, almost unreadable, but their presence carried weight, like stone pressing on the chest. It was not the look of rescuers, it was the look of judges. The man finally stepped outside, his rifle in hand. The cold air hit his face as he stood before them. The three sisters looked down at him. They were taller than any human woman, their features sharp and regal. Their weapons glowed faintly with strange energy. One of them, the eldest perhaps, spoke first. Her voice was calm but cold. "Human, you shelter one who should not live." The man tightened his grip on the rifle. "She was dying. I only saved her life." The second sister, her eyes sharper than blades, tilted her head. "You gave her your last horse. You carried her to your home. You defied what should be." The man's chest burned with anger. "She is just a girl. She was wounded. Would you have left her to die?" The sisters exchanged glances, and for a moment, none of them spoke. Finally, the youngest of the three stepped forward. Her expression was softer, and her gaze lingered on the house behind him. "He gave up much to save her," she said quietly. "Perhaps there is honor in that." The eldest frowned, her voice sharp like ice. "Honor? No. Foolishness. He does not understand our law." The father swallowed hard. He did not lower his weapon, though his arms felt heavy. "Then explain it to me. What law demands that a child be left to die?" The sisters' silence was more frightening than words. The air felt heavy, and the horse behind the shed shifted nervously again, sensing the tension. The boy, who had stepped outside despite his father's warning, hid behind his father's coat, but peeked out with wide eyes. He saw the alien girl standing weakly at the doorway, holding onto the frame for support. When the sisters saw her, they all grew still. The eldest's face hardened, the second's eyes narrowed, and the youngest's lips trembled as though holding back words. The girl's voice broke the silence. "You came," she whispered. The eldest stepped closer, her eyes full of something between anger and sorrow. "We should not have." The girl's hands shook as she tried to stand straighter. I did not mean to cause trouble." "You were meant to be gone," the second sister said, her voice sharp. "Your weakness shames us all. The hunters failed, and now this." She gestured toward the father. "A human interferes where he should not." The father's anger rose again, hot and sharp. "Weakness? She is alive because she fought to survive, because she did not give up even when you left her. If that is weakness, then I want no part of your strength." For the first time, the sisters' eyes flickered with surprise. The human's words struck something inside them. They were not used to being challenged, especially not by a man of another kind. The youngest sister looked at him for a long moment, then at the girl leaning weakly in the doorway. Her expression softened. "She belongs with us," she said gently. "But perhaps you are not wrong." The eldest turned her head sharply. "Do not let pity guide you. Our laws are older than his kind. If we break them, we invite ruin." The girl's knees buckled, and she nearly fell. The boy ran to her side and helped her stand, his small hands steady against her trembling body. The sight made the youngest sister's eyes glisten. The father lowered his rifle slightly, but his voice was steady. "If you take her, tell me this. Do you mean to save her, or to finish what others started?" The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. The sisters did not answer at once. The morning sun rose higher, spilling golden light across the yard. The shadows stretched long, and in that strange quiet, it felt as though every choice would shape not just one life, but all of theirs. The alien girl clung to the boy's shoulder, her eyes filled with fear and hope. The father stood tall before the three sisters, his heart pounding, but his will unshaken. And the sisters, tall and silent in the sunrise, faced the choice of blood, law, or mercy. The air between them was heavy, like the moment before a storm. The father stood firm, his old rifle in his hands, though he knew it would be useless against the glowing weapons the sisters carried. The boy clung to the alien girl, holding her hand tightly as if he could stop her from being taken away. The three sisters stood in a line, their tall figures shining faintly in the morning sun. None of them moved at first, and that silence was worse than shouting. Finally, the eldest sister spoke. Her voice was calm, but there was steel inside it. "She must come with us. She carries something sacred. She does not belong here." The father's jaw tightened. "She belongs wherever she is safe, and she is safe here." The second sister, sharper and colder than the eldest, stepped forward. Her eyes narrowed on him. "Human, you do not understand. By saving her, you have tied yourself to her fate. That fate will destroy you." The father did not look away. "Then let it destroy me, but I will not hand her over like an animal." The boy's heart raced, but he stood straighter, pressing his small body between the girl and the tall women. His voice shook, but he said, "You can't take her. She's ours now." For a moment, all three sisters stared at him. His courage seemed strange, coming from someone so small, but his words were firm. The youngest sister's eyes softened. She stepped closer, ignoring the sharp glance from her elders. She looked at the girl with sadness. "He gave you his last horse," she said softly. "He carried you when no one else would. Do you not see? That means something, even to us." The eldest's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "It means nothing. Our law does not bend for human kindness." The wounded girl trembled. She held the boy's hand tighter and looked at her sisters with tears shining in her strange eyes. "He saved me," she whispered. "When our own left me to die, he saved me. If that is against the law, then maybe the law is wrong." Her words struck them like arrows. The eldest sister's face hardened with anger, but there was also pain in her eyes. The second sister's lips curled, full of disgust. The youngest, however, lowered her head, as if struggling with her own heart. The father's voice was rough but steady. "You call me foolish for giving her my last horse, but I tell you this, it is better to lose everything than to live without compassion. If your law demands her death, then your law is cruel." The boy added quickly, "She sang to me. She made me sleep without fear. She's not weak. She's good." The eldest raised her hand, and the boy flinched, thinking she would strike, but instead she only held her palm toward the father. "Enough," she said coldly. "You speak of compassion, human, but you do not understand what she carries. She is not only weak, she is dangerous to herself and to you." The father's grip tightened on the rifle. "Then explain. I will hear the truth, but I will not give her up without knowing why." For the first time, the sisters hesitated. They looked at one another, silent. It was clear there was something they did not want to say. Finally, the second sister spat the words with sharp bitterness. "She was chosen to carry the blood of our line, but she was not strong enough. She failed, and failure cannot live." The boy gasped. The father's chest tightened with fury. "Failed? She is still alive. That means she fought harder than you expected." The wounded girl lowered her head, shame heavy on her shoulders. "It's true," she whispered. "I was not enough for them. They cast me out. Hunters chased me. I should not be alive." The boy pulled at her hand. "Don't say that. You are alive. You're here. That's enough." The youngest sister's lips trembled as she watched. She finally spoke, her voice almost breaking. "He gave up his last horse. He carried you into his home. His son calls you family. Do you not see? Perhaps you were meant to survive." The eldest turned sharply toward her. "You dare question the law?" "Yes," the youngest whispered. "If the law kills what is innocent, then it is no law at all." The silence that followed was deep. Even the birds seemed afraid to sing. The father could see the struggle written on their faces, duty fighting against something softer, something buried deep in their hearts. At last, the eldest lowered her hand, her face hard as stone. "We will not take her now, but know this, human, you have tied yourself to her fate. If she stays with you, danger will follow. Do not expect mercy from those who come after us." The father met her eyes and did not blink. "Let it come. I will face it." The boy, still holding the girl's hand, whispered with relief, "She stays." The sisters turned slowly, their long shadows stretching across the ground in the rising sun. They walked away with measured steps, silent as ghosts. The youngest looked back once, her glowing eyes filled with conflict, then followed her elders into the mist. The girl collapsed against the boy, trembling. She was too weak to stand on her own anymore, but her eyes were full of something new. Hope. She looked at the father, her voice breaking as she said, Why do you fight for me? I am nothing." The father stepped forward and touched her shoulder gently. "No one who survives what you did is nothing. You are alive. That is everything." Tears ran down her cheeks. She bowed her head, unable to answer. The boy hugged her tightly, whispering, "You're ours now, your family." And as the sun climbed higher, burning away the mist, the father knew the danger was far from over. But he also knew this. His choice had bound them together. Whatever came next, they would face it not as strangers, but as something closer, something stronger. A family born not of blood, but of compassion and courage. The father stayed outside long after the sisters vanished into the mist. His heart was heavy, but his decision was clear. He had stood against them, and he would stand again if needed. When he finally returned inside, he saw the girl leaning weakly against the wall, her breathing shallow. The boy was beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. The sight made the father's chest ache. They already looked like brother and sister, bound not by blood, but by survival. He set the rifle aside and knelt in front of her. "They called you dangerous," he said quietly. "But I don't see danger. I see someone broken, someone who was left behind. Tell me the truth. Why do they fear you?" Her glowing eyes lifted slowly to meet his. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her lips trembled. "Because I am not strong. Our people only respect strength. Weakness is death." The father frowned. "That is not strength. That is cruelty." She shook her head faintly. "You do not understand. Among my kind, bloodline is everything. They chose me to carry it forward, but I failed. I was not enough. When I lived, I became shame. They sent hunters to erase me." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "But you're alive. You're here with us. That means you won." Her voice cracked. "No, it means I am hunted. And now, you are hunted too." The father's jaw tightened. He rose to his feet, his voice firm. "Then let them come. I will not run. I will not give you up." She stared at him, confused. "Why? You are human. You owe me nothing." He looked at her, and his eyes softened, though his voice remained steady. "Because I know what it means to lose everything. I lost my wife. I nearly lost my son to hunger. I will not let another life vanish when I have the strength to fight. You are under my roof. That makes you mine to protect." Her hands shook as tears slipped down her glowing skin. She had never been claimed with such words, not by her own blood, not by her own kind. She whispered, "I don't deserve this." The boy squeezed her hand tighter. "Yes, you do. You sang to me. You made me safe. You're family now." The father's heart swelled with pride at his son's words. He nodded firmly. "Family is not chosen by blood. It is chosen by sacrifice. And I choose you." The girl's tears fell freely now, her whole body trembling. She whispered something in her language, a word filled with both pain and hope. Then she bowed her head. For the first time, she felt safe. But safety was only an illusion. That night, as the fire burned low, the father sat awake again. He could not sleep. The sisters had left, but their warning had cut deep. Others would come. He could feel it in his bones. The silence outside was too perfect. The forest was still. The horse shifted uneasily, as if it sensed what he did. The father gripped his rifle, his eyes scanning the dark. Hours passed. At last, he allowed himself to close his eyes for a moment. But then he heard it, the faint sound of hooves in the distance. His eyes snapped open. This time, it was not his imagination. He rose quickly, heart pounding. He checked the door, the windows. The sound grew louder, closer. He could almost feel the vibration in the ground. The girl stirred in her sleep, her body twitching as though she felt it too. She whispered again, "Sisters." Her voice was heavy with fear. The boy woke, rubbing his eyes. "Father? What is it?" "Stay with her," the man whispered. He moved to the door, rifle in hand. His breath came fast, but his hands were steady. The hooves stopped. Silence pressed down again, but it was not peaceful silence. It was the silence of something watching. The man stepped outside slowly, the cold air biting his skin. He scanned the trees but saw nothing. The mist hung heavy, thick enough to hide an army. His finger brushed the trigger, but he did not fire. Then he heard a whisper, carried on the wind. It was not human. It was their language. It chilled him more than any blade could. He stepped back toward the door, his mind racing. Inside, the girl was fully awake now. Her eyes glowed brighter, her body tense. "They will not stop," she said, voice trembling. "They will come again and again. You cannot fight them all." The father turned to her, his voice sharp but full of fire. "I will fight as long as I must. If I die, then I die as a man who stood for what is right. I will not hand you over to their cruelty." She shook her head, tears forming again. "Why are you like this? Why risk everything for me?" He looked at her with steady eyes. "Because humanity is not strength of the body. It is strength of the heart. And my heart will not allow me to watch you be destroyed." The boy, frightened but brave, stood beside his father. "We'll fight together," he said firmly. The father smiled faintly and ruffled his son's hair. "No, you will protect her. That is your fight." The girl's eyes shone as she looked at them both. For the first time, she realized that weakness was not what they said it was. To be weak and still loved was stronger than any law her people followed. Outside, the mist shifted. Shadows moved among the trees. The father lifted his rifle, his body tense, ready. He knew the battle was coming. He knew he might not survive. But he also knew one thing for certain. He would not surrender her. The night stretched long, heavy with danger, but also with a strange, unshakable bond. The girl, once hunted and broken, now had someone willing to stand for her. The boy, small but fearless, clung to her side as though she had always been his sister. And the father, a man with nothing left but his son and his courage, prepared to defend both of them. The law of her people had called her unworthy. But his law, the law of the human heart, had already decided she was worth everything. The night had been long, and the father had not slept at all. He stood near the door with his rifle in hand, his body stiff from waiting. The sound of hooves had faded hours ago, but he knew it was not the end. The girl's warning had proven true. Danger followed her like a shadow. The boy slept lightly beside her, his small body curled close as if he could shield her. She rested with her glowing eyes half closed, whispering in dreams. The father kept watch, his thoughts heavy but his heart firm. He had made his choice, and there was no going back. At last, the sky began to change. Darkness faded into pale light, and the first colors of dawn painted the horizon. The father's eyes burned from exhaustion, but he did not let go of the rifle. The horse outside gave a soft, uneasy cry, stamping the ground. Then silence. The girl stirred, waking with a sudden shiver. She sat up weakly, clutching the boy's hand. Her eyes turned to the window, and fear filled them. She whispered, "They are here." The father moved quickly, stepping outside before the boy could follow. He squinted into the growing light. At first, he saw nothing but mist curling around the trees. Then, shapes appeared again, 3 tall figures stepping out of the fog in silence. It was the sisters. They had returned. The father's grip tightened on the rifle. His heart beat fast, but his face remained steady. The sisters stopped at the fence, their glowing weapons at their sides. The eldest spoke first, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. "We have decided. We will not end your life today, but the girl cannot return to us. She belongs nowhere." The man's voice came firm, cutting the air like steel. "She belongs here. With us." The middle sister sneered, her sharp eyes fixed on him. "You think kindness makes her strong? You think your pity changes fate? She will bring ruin upon you." The father stepped closer, refusing to back down. "If ruin comes, then I face it, but I will face it with honor, not cruelty. I will not give her back to the ones who left her for dead." The youngest sister's eyes wavered. She looked at the man, then at the house where the girl watched from the doorway. There was sorrow in her gaze. "You are different, human," she whispered. "You gave her your last horse. You carried her home. You fought for her when even we did not. For that, you are bound to her now. Her life is yours to guard." The eldest frowned, but did not argue. Instead, she stepped forward and drew a blade that glowed with strange light. The father raised his rifle, ready to fight, but she did not attack. Instead, she drove the blade into the ground at his feet. The earth hissed where it struck, leaving a mark like fire burned into the soil. "This is the oath of our kind," she said. "You are her protector now. But know this, if she falls, if you fail, her fate will stain your line forever." The father did not blink. "Then I will not fail." The sisters looked at him for a long, silent moment. Then they turned together, their tall shapes fading into the mist once more. They left as silently as they had come, leaving behind only the mark in the earth and the weight of their words. The father lowered his rifle slowly. His body trembled, not with fear, but with the heavy knowledge of what he had accepted. He stepped back inside, and the boy ran to him at once. "Did they take her? Are they gone?" "They are gone," the man said quietly. "For now." The girl sat weakly on the bed, her glowing eyes wide with shock. "They gave you their oath," she whispered. "No one outside our blood has ever received it. You are bound to me now. My life is yours." The father shook his head. "No, your life is yours. I only promise to protect it." The boy hugged her tightly, smiling through his fear. "That means you stay with us. You're family now." For the first time, the girl's lips curved into a true smile. It was small and trembling, but real. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered, "Family." The word felt strange on her tongue, but it warmed her like fire. The sun rose higher, filling the small wooden house with light. The girl sat with the boy beside her, their hands joined. The father stood near them, his shadow stretching across the floor. The air felt different now, heavy with both danger and hope. He knew their troubles were far from over. Hunters might still come. More of her people might arrive, demanding blood or punishment. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would fight for her as fiercely as he fought for his son. She was no longer a stranger buried in pain. She was theirs now. And in her glowing eyes, for the first time, he saw not weakness but strength. The strength to survive, the strength to belong. The father looked at the horizon, the rifle resting against his shoulder, and whispered to himself, "Whatever comes, we face it together." And as the morning light spread across the land, 3 broken souls, a widowed father, his small son, and a hunted alien girl, stood at the edge of a new beginning. A family born not of blood, but of choice, courage, and a single act of compassion that changed everything.